Chères mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues, bonjour à tous. Je suis extrêmement heureux d'avoir l'honneur d'ouvrir cette intéressante conférence. Je crois devoir le choix très important et bienvenu pour moi de présider cette première session plus à l'amitié d'Aegaea, avec lequel je collabore depuis de nombreuses années, qu'au fait que j'ai édité la publication d'un couple de volumes sur les gemmes, respectivement en allemand sur les gemmes d'Aquilée et en Italie chez l'Herme de Breschneider, sur les gemmes modernes, ainsi que j'ai étudié avec le même professeur Lafli les gemmes du musée archéologique d'Izmir en Turquie. Nous sommes ici, une fois de plus, pour une initiative culturelle particulièrement voulue par le fervent professeur Ergen Lafli, qui sont actifs un grand nombre d'études et de propositions historico-artistiques relatives à l'Anatolie ancienne. Aujourd'hui, nous rechercherons le vaste domaine des pierres précieuses gravées, pour lesquelles la région de la Turquie, à part quelques sages, est jusqu'au présent restée essentiellement terra incognita. Hic sunt leon. Il nous manque dans cette, comme dans d'autres cas, toute une série de clarifications locales qui constituent les matériaux sur lesquels on essaie ensuite d'élaborer une vaste synthèse au niveau régional. Mais ce qui n'a pas été jusqu'au présent le sera certainement à l'avenir. Commençons donc cette vaste revue d'études, quoique dans les limites que la propagation de la pandémie et les moyens disponibles nous permettent. Nous avons également de la chance de pouvoir entendre des reportages non seulement sur les joyaux de l'époque classique, mais aussi sur ces modernes ou post-classiques, dans lesquels on entend l'importance des souvenirs, thème auquel Ernst Kunz a consacré certaines de ces études il y a plusieurs années. Et je voudrais recommander à tous de respecter absolument le temps. Encore une note de service à présenter. Nous sommes tous devenus malheureusement des experts en matière de connexion via Zoom par notre ordinateur. Je souhaite utiliser le chat ou lever virtuellement la main en appuyant sur le bouton en bas à droite pour indiquer que vous souhaitez poser une question quand la discussion aura lieu. Notre conférence s'ouvre sur un rapport tant attendu du révérend professeur Martin Henig d'Oxford. J'invite donc Iva Kaić à lire les rapports de révérend. Commencez, s'il vous plaît.
Hello to you all. Hello, I will just start sharing screen. And please tell me if you see it. Do you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So thank you very much. I will start now because we are short on time, and I will read the paper for Dr. Henig. I'm honored to do so. So it is entitled Partial Contrast with the Roman East, the Invisibility of Local Gods in the Glyptic Art of the Western Provinces, the Case of the Goddess Ceres.
I'm sorry.
We can't see your screen.
You cannot see my screen.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Check it again, please.
Yes, I will try to do that again.
Yeah.
Just a second. Share. And
Yes,
now?
we see it now.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No problem, no problem.
Do you see that I have changed the slide?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so the first slide. In the Western provinces of the Roman Empire, local deities were virtually never depicted on Roman intaglios, or for that matter, on coins. This contrasts with the situation in the Eastern provinces, in Asia Minor and Syria, where gems celebrate a number of local cults, for example, those associated with Mount Argeus, Zeus the Lichenos, Zeus Heliopolitanos, the Bethel of Elagabal, the god of men, and the three graces belonging to local cult at Gadara, all of which are also the subject of local coinages from the region. The Egyptian deities, Isis, Serapis, and Harpocrates, though somewhat more widespread on gems found in the Western provinces, as were their cults, are sure indicators of influence from Egypt and the Levant, and are very much commoner in the Levant. They too appear on coins struck in Alexandria. Moreover, the Greco-Egyptian magical amulets are without exception Levantine. Western magic doubtless existed, but is not represented on engraved gems. Of course, apart from the special case of magical amulets, even in Anatolia and Syria, deities which display distinctive local iconography were in minority, and the manner in which figures derived from Greek art were recognized by those who wore their images on their rings will have applied to many owners of gems in the East Mediterranean, as they did in the far West. So the following reflections on the reception of Greco-Roman iconography in the most westerly province of the empire, Britannia, has some relevance even in the richer provinces of the Levant. Virtually the only native British deity that has been recognized is on red jasper in Taglio from South Shields, County Durham, which has been recognized as the product of a North British workshop. It depicts a huntsman with hound, but is generally recognized as the god Silvanus Coccidius, although it may simply be an adaptation by the local workshop of one of the second of the bonus eventus type, which we will discuss a little later. Intaglios mounted in signet rings were the most personal items that people of any pretension to independence would possess. A very common device upon on them is said Ceres, a Latinized version of Greek Demeter. Unsurprisingly, when so many people made their living from the land, and much of lowland Britain consisted of good arable land, so that an ear of wheat was proudly displayed on the gold coins of the early 1st century king of the Catuvelauni and of the Trinovantes, King Cunobelli. As you can see here. Characteristically, on these gems, Ceres is depicted either seated upon a chair-like throne, supporting herself with her right arm and holding ears of wheat in her left hand, or else standing holding a patera in her right hand and 2 ears of corn in her left. On Roman coins, the latter is shown as the personification of with reference, in fact, in reference, no doubt, to Roman corn dough, which in the imperial period largely originated, in fact, from Egypt. These 2 depictions of Ceres clearly derive from different sculptural types. In both instances, she is frequently accompanied by her cult animal, the ant, famous for its busy communal activity and productivity. This insect represents both the hard work of the cereal farmer's life and the prosperity resulting from it. Many of the gems depicting the seated Ceres are cut on green stones, mainly jaspers and chrome chalcedonies, the color green being associated with the crop before it ripens. But on one fine example of the seated Ceres, evidently dropped by a visitor to the sanctuary at March and Freelford near Abingdon in Oxfordshire, the green jasper is shot through with a brown streak on the right side of the stone, in which the wet ear and part of the ant are engraved, representing most probably the ripening crop. A fine example of the standing Ceres type, engraved on an emerald, a very much rarer green gem, set in a gold ring, was found in Brackley, Northamptonshire, possibly the site of a Roman villa. Such sympathetic coloring is a feature sometimes met on intaglios, for example, milky chalcedony, presumably selected as the color of clouds for portrayal of Jupiter, and blue-purple amethyst, supposed to be wine-colored for Bacchus, and indeed Medhe, supposedly a specific against inebriation, but the choice of material was always conditioned by availability, and the most generally available gems were opaque red jasper, and as we will see, especially translucent red cornelian. The type of the standing Ceres has a male equivalent holding the same attributes, probably derived from the Eleusinian deity Triptolemos, although the figure was translated by the Romans as a personification of good outcomes, including a good harvest, bonus eventus. As in the case of Ceres, there are many other examples of this common gem type from British sites, including incidentally one from the site of the March and Freelford Sanctuary, though this is unfortunately broken. As with Ceres, this other type of bonus eventus, showing him standing in profile, one leg crossed behind the other, and frequently, but not always like the ones here cited, holding ears of cereal. Others show him holding a dish of fruit or bunch of grapes or even a bread. These gems on this slide have been found at forts and on civilian settlements throughout Britain and in other provinces. There is no problem in viewing them in entirely classical terms as Greco-Roman deity or personification in the more Romanized locations, but there are questions to be asked when we find any of these devices on the signet rings of local farmers in the countryside. This is a problem which comes up in an acute fashion surveying the locally cut gems, all of red cornelian from the Snetisham Roman jewelers' hoard, which may be identified as part of a stock in trade intended for sale to Norfolk farmers. Out of 117 gems in this cache, 20 depict Ceres, all of the standing type. One depicts an ant and another 3 ears of corn in a modius, which evoke the goddess. In addition, 26 depicts bonus eventus, all but one of the frontal type, which mirrors Ceres. Other deities and personification include Abundantia with cornucopia and offering dish, 11 pieces, Fortuna with cornucopia and rudder, 4 pieces, Minerva, 6 pieces, in one instance apparently holding a wet ear, Diana, 2 pieces, Mercury, 6 pieces, as well as a cockerel, 3 pieces, in 2 cases with an ear of wet, then Mars Gradivus with 2 pieces, Silvanus with 2 pieces, and Jupiter, Venus, and Nemesis, which occur only once. There are a number of representations of birds and other emblems of prosperity, but the stock presumably represents what people wanted. Gems were not simple amulets. Essentially, a divine image on the ring was the actual deity enshrined with the wearer. All the identified figures have been described in Roman terms, and it is legitimate to ask what native concepts lay behind them. Going back to Cunobelin's sweat ear and even further back. Evidence for named native deities is all derived from the Roman period and mainly from inscriptions, which are in relatively short supply in southern Britain. There is also iconographic evidence, mainly in stone and metal, in some instances linked to epigraphy. Here, we are especially concerned with a goddess represented by Ceres, though Abundantia suggests the same content. And taken together with bonus eventus, these represent half the gems in the cache. The best evidence, both iconographic and epigraphic, for a Ceres-like goddess in the region, Eastern Britain, is a silver gilt statuette, part of a temple cache unearthed in Ashwell, Hertfordshire. It presents a female figure wearing a long chiton and mantle, as does Ceres on gems and coins, and like her, she holds an offering dish in one hand and 2 ears of wheat in the other. The base is inscribed, however, with a dedication by a woman, Flavia Cunoris, to Dea Senuna. However, other dedications to Senuna in the form of gold and silver plaques generally portray Senuna as Minerva, armed and holding a spear and shield. Although on a figurine from nearby Hingsworth, she holds a cornucopia rather than a spear and is apparently a conflation of Minerva with Fortuna Abundantia. Fortuna Abundantia is frequently shown on coins and gems and on sculpture, but the only inscription from southern Britain naming her are from Caerleon, fortress of Legio Secunda Augusta, and provide no local epithets. The second of these couples her with bonus eventus, who may be seen, iconographically at least, as a male equivalent of Ceres. In votive sculpture from Britain, local gods and goddesses appear with the greatest regularity. One native goddess who might have fulfilled the role of Ceres and Abundantia in a discrete region is the territorial goddess of the Cotswold region, that was Kuda, attested epigraphically by a single inscription on the base of a votive relief from Allingworth, Gloucestershire, which depicts her enthroned, holding a spherical object on her lap and accompanied by 3 hooded subordinate figures, to which the name Genii Cuculati has been given, but we do not know what they were actually called. Even Yates, examining onomastic or place name evidence from the region, confirms her name. Other examples from the central Cotswolds of the goddess with 3 supporters are recorded from Cirencester, and there is a particularly clear example from nearby Stratton, although the figures are now headless as a result of a fracture of the stone. On the southern fringe of the region, there are examples from Bradford-on-Avon, Wiltshire, and perhaps another from Eastern Grey in the same county, made and presumably dedicated by a man called Civilis. There are single goddesses also seated from Lower Slaughter, Gloucestershire, which was previously wrongly identified as Minerva, and one in the far west of the region from Gilmill, near Witney, Oxfordshire. It should be emphasized that none of these hold ears of corn, but rather fruit or perhaps a cake. The statuette of a single goddess from Cirencester, who has 3 large apples in her lap, might be another portrait of Kuda. However, another statuette of single enthroned goddess holding a fruit was found considerably further west in a house at Caerwent, Monmouthshire, in southeast Wales. In this case, evidently holding the fir tree emblem associated with the Bunic coinage, unless it is actually meant to be a stylized serial ear. In any case, she too is a candidate for a local transformation of Ceres. Less certainly native in origin are several groups of so-called matres from Cirencester, perhaps on the basis of 2 votive altars from the city called the Suleviae. On the votive reliefs, not all are strictly mother goddesses, although 3 infants are shown with one group and the central goddess of another nurses a baby. Others hold trays of cake or fruit. Similar trays of mothers from Lincoln and Ancaster are from major centers in the East Midlands. Perhaps these goddesses with fruit suggest that the harvest was simply represented in a different way, not symbolized by ears of grain, but as cakes and fruits from the orchard. And figures on signet rings depicting Ceres could have been venerated as Kuda. Other named goddesses, as we have seen Senuna on most of the plaques from Ashwell and famously Sulis from Bath, were equated with Minerva. There must have been others. The female companion of Mercury on reliefs from Gloucester, Cirencester and Oldsworth, Gloucestershire, are probably from Swalcliffe, Oxfordshire, has been equated with Rosmerta, but like the Suleviae, Rosmerta would have been an imported deity from Gaul. Did she have a local British name? And as a goddess of fecundity, might she also have been the deity a wearer of a gem showing Ceres would have been thinking about? One of the most interesting reliefs is that from the villa at Stonesfield, Oxfordshire. In front of a representation of a bust, perhaps a household lar, stands a male and female figure, the female with a basket of fruit, the male with an offering dish, patera. There is no inscription, but this is simply Fortuna and Bonus Eventus, as on the Carleon relief, or Ceres and Bonus Eventus. So, what did people at this Cotswold villa actually call these figures? Sulis, and in most cases Senuna too, and even Mercury's consort, often called Rosmerta, borrowed the outward appearance of Minerva, but were clearly different from her and essentially goddesses of fecundity. However, the problem of how the Roman concept of fecundity, represented by the Greco-Roman image of Ceres, was translated to the local population of southern Britain, who must have envisaged the concept rather differently, remain, although the sculpture provides a partial answer. We could have pursued representations of male deities, such as the war goddess Ares Mars, who would have been venerated by Roman soldiers in that spirit, but on the altars from rural sanctuaries in Britain, for all his military arms and armor, Mars was here a protective deity of the crops, and sometimes provided with a local epithet. Returning to the subject of gems, the images of deities that native people wore in their signet rings, not only in Britain, but also in Gaul and Germany and beyond, were the same as those figured on gems from Italy. The classical Roman deities and personifications as depicted on the official imperial coinage. Bruna Nardelli, for example, has pointed to the ubiquity of figures of Fortuna from Dalmatia, particularly from Zadar. These should have a special local relevance. The exception are the rare cases where a deity from Asia Minor, the Levant or Egypt is depicted upon a gem, such as Jupiter Heliopolitanus from the great military base at Corbridge, or the figure of Isis on a gem from Roxter, or a magical amulet from a villa at Welwyn in Hertfordshire, all of which suggest soldiers in auxiliary regiments, visitors or immigrants, often merchants from the eastern provinces. For example, the gem figuring Jupiter Heliopolitanus from Corbridge almost certainly belonged to a member of the Syrian regiment of Hamian archers based at the Hadrian's Wall fort of Carburan, a few kilometers away. However, there is a final point that needs to be made, returning to the east and leaving true, for example, the excellent catalogue of the Yüksel Eremitan collection published by Kore Konuk and Melih Arslan. The majority of deities are the standard ones that one might expect, but the question remains as to whether here too much more local deities were represented in the hearts and minds of worshippers beneath a classical Greco-Roman outward form. Thank you for your attention. I hope you did hear me and understand everything.
We did. Thank you so much, Ivo. As you can see, I enticed our author, Martin, to sit with me here in the Beasley Archive.
Oh, hello.
Thank you so much also for making this wonderful PowerPoint. I think you can stop sharing your screen now.
Yes, I will try to do that.